Alright, I am back from my slightly extended hiatus to bring you another build video. And it's an incredibly special one because the moment we've all been waiting for, I would say over a year, probably since the game came out, is finally here. Mods have officially come to the game. Now, obviously, we've had modded content up until now, but this is the start of the update where basically mods are going to be available to everyone, both console and PC alike. It's patch 7, baby, the thing that we've been waiting for, like I said. And as such, this means that now that patch 7 has come out, I am going to be dipping my toes into modded content officially. I have kind of in the past, but not really in a major capacity. But now that we have official mod support, I really want to start working it into my regular content in multiple different ways. For now, I'm just dipping my toes back in, as I have just come back from a 2.5 week kind of break from making content, so this is just going to be a pretty standard build video for the most part. However, I obviously am including modded content now, as you can clearly see from the fact that I'm playing a Fire Genasi. More on that in a minute. Obviously, this does not mean all of my content is going to be modded right from the bat. The actual console mods patch doesn't come out until October, and for all intents and purposes, we don't actually know 100% what mods are going to be available on console versus PC, even with the official mod support. So, while I am going to be dipping my toes into this style of content now with the mods, it's not going to be completely replacing vanilla content, so don't worry. Until I have solid confirmation of what is going to be available on console for everyone, these are going to be in limited supply. So feel free to continue submitting vanilla-based requests. However, I also am going to be diving into my own mods as well. I plan to create a subclass. I'll let you try and guess which class it's for. I bet you won't. Well, somebody will, but they won't be able to guess kind of what it's meant to be. And as well as making my own homebrew items. And of course, if those mods are successful and are available on both console and PC, then obviously I'll be using those sorts of things as well. So feel free to kind of stick around. I might stream some sort of mod creation, get some ideas going. We'll make it a community effort like we always do. Anyways, sorry for the extended rant at the start. Obviously, I've been gone for a while, so it's just a small update on kind of the state of the channel as we get into, well, this new era of it. Definitely a well-needed break. I feel like my passion has been reignited for this sort of thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do with the channel moving forward. But without further ado, let's get into the build. So the build we're going to be making today is called the Firestar. Obviously, this can come with a lot of things, like kind of ideas about it. I wanted to focus on a certain subclass that has been added to the game through the new official mod systems, and so I came up with a build designed around that. And obviously, for the fun of it, I wanted to use one of the new races, that being the Genasi. Basically, the Genasi are offspring of genies and mortals, basically. Genasi as such, Genasi are tied to two worlds, yet never really belonging to either. That's kind of the little flavor text we get here. So basically, Genasi are half genies, and their kind of heritage depends on which elemental plane that genie was attached to. In the case of the sub-races, we have here, which we're using Fire Genasi, basically giving us access to produce flame that uses our intelligence, which we're not going to be focusing on in this build, so that's a bit of a shame, but hey, blue fire on your arm lighting up the surrounding area is always cool. And we're also getting access to dark vision and resistance to fire damage. But there's also air, water, and earth Genasi, which I will focus on in later videos. But then I kind of thought, well, how am I going to make this into an interesting build? Obviously, I've got the fire theming as well, and again, I kind of wanted to try power building a little bit with these mods, because again, the big problem with mods is you don't know how broken they're going to be, and I don't mean broken from a technical sense, I mean broken from being like an overpowered sense. So I had to do a little bit of testing here and there to make sure this build wasn't too powerful, and don't get me wrong, it's powerful, but not like game-breakingly so. It's a fun offensive DPS build, but also comes with a bit of utility in the form of healing and some other skills, which I think you are going to like. You've probably already guessed, just from that description, what we're building today, but let's keep it as a surprise for now. So first up, we are going to be starting off as a Sorcerer. Sorcerer is going to give us access to a few things, namely Constitution saving throw proficiency, which means our concentration saves are going to be better, which is nice for us. It's going to give us access to a ton of cantrips, some of which I do really want for this build. Speaking of, let's look at those now. For our cantrips, pick whatever you like, just make sure one of them is Firebolt. Firebolt is going to be one of the main damaging cantrips for this build. We will have multiple ways of stacking different damage modifiers onto our cantrips, specifically fire cantrips, which is going to be extremely important for us to work with. Next up, Friends. Obviously, Friends is just a great cantrip in general. I like to take this pretty much whenever I can, as well as whatever you like here. I went for Acid Splash to have a close range attack, and Acid Corrosion Sulfur kind of works with the fire theming, but you'll see what I mean as we get further in, and Mage Hand because it's a good utility cantrip. Anyway, we're also going to be picking up a couple of spells. Chromatic Orb is going to give us access to a decent fire damage attack as well as other elements when we need it, and Shield is one of the best utility spells in the game. For our subclass, I'm going with Draconic Bloodline. This is going to give us a bit of extra HP with each level we take in Sorcerer, as well as natural Draconic Resilience, giving us natural armor, meaning that we do not have to take Mage Armor as one of our spells, which is great. It also saves us a spell slot every long rest. For our Draconic Ancestor, choose whatever you like, just make sure it's one of the 3 fire ancestries. Obviously, we want to be able to boost our fire attacks as much as we can, and this is going to help us do that. So your options in that case are red fire, which would give you Burning Hands. You could go for the gold fire, which I have here, which is going to give me Disguise Self, because I thought a Genasi is not exactly going to be common in the realm of Baldur's Gate, so having Disguise Self to avert eyes will be great, or brass for whatever brass gets you. I can't remember it, and it won't let me select it in this menu, so someone will remind me, I'm sure. And then finally, for our ability scores, we have a pretty standard charisma-based spellcasting spread. Dexterity is at 16 to give us decent armor class, Constitution is at 14, would like this to be a bit higher, feel free to adjust as you like, since you know this will give us a better Constitution saving throws and a bit more HP as well. We also have Intelligence and Wisdom both at 10, because I didn't really want to put either at 8, but you can adjust as you see fit, and Charisma is at 16 because it is going to be our main spellcasting modifier. And finally, onto skill proficiencies. Choose whatever you like. I went with Sage background because I am going for slightly more of a spellcaster vibe with this build, but there will be kind of other variations you can do, which in this case is going to give us Arcana and History, but feel free to change that up however you like. And for our regular proficiencies we get from Sorcerer, I've gone with Deception and Persuasion, but again, choose your favourites. Next up at level 2, let's just dive right into the meat and potatoes. We're going to look at our multi-class option, and you've probably already guessed it. It's Warlock. Now, with Warlock, we're going to gain access to our subclasses amongst a few other things. Now, of course, you're thinking, oh, well, he's multi-classing into Warlock, he must be taking Pact of the Fiend. Well, we're going with Celestial for the first time on this channel. Celestial is really, really cool. It's basically the closest a Warlock is going to get to a Cleric, at least on their own. It comes with built-in radiant damage, as well as the ability to pick up healing spells as well, giving the Warlock a unique damage type that it doesn't really get access to normally, as well as an added bit of utility through the ability to gain healing spells. As such, added to our spell list for Warlock here, we have Cure Wounds, a pretty damn good healing spell, as well as Guiding Bolt. We also gain 2 new cantrips as well, being Light and Sacred Flame, and a unique ability to us, Healing Light, which allows us to, once per short rest as a bonus action, we can heal a little bit as a bonus action, like I said, equal to 1d6 plus our charisma modifier. This will kind of increase in power as we level up. Now, there is a newer version of this mod that kind of was made by a different mod author that came out kind of during the making of this video, as I understand it, which is a bit more accurate to the 5e version, where you actually have a unique resource for this, instead of it just being once per short rest. Some people might prefer that. Functionally, for the most part, the mods are the same, just with little tweaks and adjustments here and there. This one feels a bit closer to BG3's kind of like way of doing things, in my opinion. It's slightly more limited, so it's not too overpowered, but feel free to choose whichever mod works best for you. They should both work the same. Again, that kind of came out as this video was kind of already being made, so I didn't really have time to swap mods and test that out, because I wanted to actually get a video out for you guys since it's been a while, so feel free to let me know if I should have used the other mod instead. And again, feel free to submit mods for videos in the Discord, because we have a channel for that. But anyways, like I say, we gain access to all this cool stuff. We are going to gain access to a couple of the cantrips too. I am going to take Eldritch Blast because I did use it in my testing, but just as a damage comparison, we are going to be taking Eldritch Blast invocations here as well, you know, like Agonizing Blast and the like, again to compare the power. And you would actually be surprised how many times things like Firebolt came out on top, even when Eldritch Blast is technically functioning at full power. Again, we'll have a lot of different damage types here, basically Fire, Force, and Radiant, so you'll have a lot of options to overcome resistances. But if you don't feel like you want to focus on Eldritch Blast, you want to actually focus on the stuff that's unique to this build, then don't bother taking those things and diversify your build a bit more. Entirely up to you. So for your other cantrips, choose whatever you like. I kind of like Minor Illusion here. And as for our spells, I'm just going to take the ones that the subclass gives us because they're new to us. So, like I say, Cure Wounds and Guiding Bolt. Next up at Warlock level 2, we're going to get access to another spell, and I'm going to be taking Hellish Rebuke because it is another fire spell that's going to work for us. We're also going to get access to Eldritch Invocations. Like I say, I did take Agonizing Blast for my testing, and I do find that having the option to Eldritch Blast when it would be appropriate is quite good to still have as part of the utility of this build, so I do recommend picking this up here. For your other invocation, pick whatever your favourite thing is. I didn't focus on Darkness Devil Sight in this build because I didn't really want to, however, taking Devil Sight here is an option, and honestly just having Devil Sight in general is just bog standard useful anyway, so I would still recommend picking it up here, regardless. Next up at Warlock level 3, we get to pick our Pact Boon, and honestly, you can choose any pact you want, but it will work for this build, and you can kind of tweak the build depending on the variation that you go for. Pact of the Chain would let you summon an Imp, which I feel like could be pretty on theme for a fire-based build like this. You could also go for Pact of the Blade if you want to make this a spell sword build, maybe throw in a couple of levels of Paladin somewhere along the line to really get that kind of Radiant Warrior feeling. And of course, if you go with this, you'll gain access to pretty much any martial weapon in the game thanks to Bind Pact Weapon, as well as extra attack later on, so I have some options for some equipment if you decide you want to go down that route a bit later. However, the route I focused on for this build is I wanted something slightly more spellcasty. I went with Pact of the Tome. Pact of the Tome is going to give us access to more cantrips, namely Guidance, which kind of fits that Warlock as a Cleric as a Warlock type vibe, as well as things like Vicious Mockery and Thorn Whip, which are both going to get boosted by some stuff that we're going to get a bit later, as well as you do get to replace a spell at this level if you so choose. At Warlock level 4, we're going to gain access to another spell, and it's up to you to choose kind of what you want here. It really doesn't matter. Whatever you think is going to have the most utility for the build. We have Darkness, we have Hold Person, all good spells, Misty Step, Mirror Image, these can all work really nicely. I took Flaming Sphere because it felt like it was the most on theme for the build, gives us a nice summon option to spend our concentration on at kind of around this level mark. So I would say picking up this one is quite nice, but feel free to grab something else if you think it would be more useful. Obviously, Darkness is the power move in most cases, but it's entirely up to you. We also do get a feat at this level. I'm just going to take an ability score improvement and bump up that charisma. Next up at Warlock level 5, we're going to gain access to our Deepened Pact, which is going to allow us, as a Pact of the Tome Warlock, gain access to Animate Dead, Haste, and Call Lightning. Haste is the big one there. It's definitely going to be a useful utility for this build, although I did have a slight bug. I'm not sure if this is due to the mod or the patch, one or the other, but my concentration seemed to drop randomly when it shouldn't have, so be a bit careful if you use this mod. Things in patch 7 can be a little bit unstable at the moment with or without mods. Larian are working on it, so let me know if that was a bug encountered through a mod or something else. It wasn't consistent in my testing, it just seemed to happen randomly, but let me know if it happened to you. We also do get to pick another invocation at this level, and it's entirely up to you what you want to take. It really doesn't matter, as I've already said. Mire the Mind is a really fun personal choice of mine because it gives you the ability to cast Slow, which is just a generically powerful concentration option anyway, so I would probably go with that. And at Warlock level 6, we're going to gain access to one of the only subclass features in the game that I actually truly do think it's worth going to level 6 of Warlock to take in multi-class builds like these. We're going to gain access to Radiant Soul. Your link to the Celestial allows you to serve as a conduit for Radiant Energy. You have resistance to Radiant damage, and you add your Charisma modifier to spells dealing Radiant or Fire damage. We're going to be stacking that with some equipment, but that is a really powerful ability. There's very few ways to get resistance to radiant damage in this game, and adding our charisma modifier to radiant or fire damage is so cool. Again, being able to allow us to really power build with this build if we so choose. And I just love the idea of this like celestial genie type character that can kind of like float on like misty winds and such, like flaming embers as the stars cascade over like a sunset lit night sky or something. I don't bloody know. I'm trying to come up with lore for this character. I'm just excited to use the mods. Come on. You guys can justify why this character has this power. Anyways, next up for our spells, we do gain access to level 3 ones at this point, and you have a few options. We do gain access to Remove, Curse, and Revivify. If you really want to play into that healer aspect, Revivify would be a nice spell for this build, but in reality, take whatever you like. It really doesn't matter. Now, this subclass does get a few more cool abilities. Like I said, at level 5 with level 4 spells, you're going to get things like Guardian of Faith and Wall of Fire, which are two really fun spells anyway. But I do kind of want to hop off of here now to go back to Draconic Sorcerer. For the record, if it wasn't going to be Draconic Sorcerer, if we had Divine Soul in this game, I would absolutely be using that right now, but we don't. So we're going to use Draconic Sorcerer here. So for level 2 of Draconic Sorcerer, we're going to gain access to our meta magic options. I'm going to pick Twinned and Careful Spell, since we are going to get some big AoE spells. I do like Careful Spell here, and Twin Spell is always good. We're also going to get access to another spell at this point, and I think just having a solid, reliable, always going to work damage dealing option is really important, so we're going to go with the classic Magic Missile. Next up, at level 3, we're going to gain access to another spell, and we do get to choose level 2 spells from here. And of course, I'm going to go with Scorching Ray, because it is the most on theme for the build. We also do gain access to another meta magic option, and of course, I'm choosing Quicken Spell to allow us to cast spells as a bonus action. Next up, at level 4 of Sorcerer, we're going to gain access to another cantrip. Choose whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. We're also going to gain access to another spell at this level, and again, it's a pick your favourite type situation. I really like picking up the Blindness spell. I think it's a really powerful non-concentration option that allows you to basically just give a massive debuff to an enemy that's going to help your whole team. Blind is a really powerful status condition. Whereas you do gain access to another feat at this point, I do recommend maxing out your Charisma here. At Sorcerer level 5, we're going to gain access to level 3 spells, and you know what that means? Fireball. Need I say more? And finally, at Sorcerer level 6, we are going to gain access to the subclass features of the Draconic Bloodline, namely Elemental Affinity Damage. Because we chose Fire as our affinity at the very start, now whenever we cast a Fire spell, it's going to add our Charisma modifier to the damage, which we already do with our Radiant Soul feature, which means we're adding our Charisma modifier to the damage twice. And yeah, we're going to be doing that a few more times. Let's keep going. Pick whatever spell you like from the spell list for your final spell of the build. We already have things like Haste, but if you wanted to pick it up so you can use it more than once per long rest, you absolutely can. I'm just going to recommend picking up Counterspell. And that is the build as I fix the camera. So that is the build. What you're overall getting out of this is a really fun new way to kind of approach Warlock. Yes, we've kind of made one of the bog standard Warlocks that you would normally see people make, but the added utility coming from being able to heal yourself and your allies, being able to have massive amounts of radiant and fire damage, which again most Warlocks would not normally get access to, and just having other fun, powerful options other than things like Eldritch Blast are always just going to be a fun time. You also have the variance of this build. Want to be packed to the tome for a more spellcaster rebuild? Go ahead. If you want to be packed to the blade to go for a more spell sword type build, you absolutely can. If you want to go for a pack to the chain build, you should probably seek help. Otherwise, unless you download a mod that actually makes it good, who knows, we might see that in the future. Otherwise, that was a bad joke. Don't take that out of context. Anyways, overall, the build is really fun, really thematic. I absolutely love the design of this character. Again, being able to play a Fire Genasi is so cool. It just adds that little bit of extra spice to the build, quite literally, that I absolutely love. For the record, all of the cosmetic mods that you will be seeing me use in these videos will also be available on the mod manager, so feel free to check those out there as well. But anyways, let's get into the equipment. So for the equipment, you again have a couple of options for what you want to do as far as this build is concerned. Obviously, you can go the more spellcastery route, which is what I've done here, which would mean picking up the Marker Hesh Key in Act 3 is probably going to be your best option for a quarterstaff for this build. It's going to give you the ability to use Arcane Battery, which allows you to alleviate the arcane burden of spellcasting by making it so your next spell does not cost a spell slot. Our spell slots are a bit more limited with this build, so having this as an option in Act 3 is great. We're mainly here though for Kareska's Favour, which of course is going to allow us to attune ourselves to the fire element, giving us access to a couple of powerful fire spells once per short rest, basically Warlock spells for us anyway, and then also being able to gain heat as well. It's entirely up to you, like kind of what you want to do with this build. As far as that's concerned, like if you want to go for the spellcaster route with the Marker Hesh Kit, or if you want to go for the more melee combat route, in which I have a couple of options here for you there. But if you want an early game option for the staff, the Incandescent Staff is quite good, giving you access to Firebolt and Fireball, just a little bit, as well as resistance to fire damage. Perhaps you're not playing the Fire Genasi, you can go for something like that to kind of get a similar effect in the early game. But for here, for your kind of Spell Blade option, if you wanted to go for Pact of the Blade, you can go for the Sacred Star, which just makes sense. You'll get an extra 1d4 radiant damage on your attacks, which is awesome. You'll inflict Radiating Orb upon your target, which causes causes them to have a penalty to their attack rolls. You also have the ability to turn undead creatures, well, you have a chance to, and you also gain tenacity, which means even if you miss, you still hit for a little bit of damage anyway. You also gain access to Dawn Burst Strike, allowing you to deal additional radiant damage equal to your proficiency bonus, and enemies will have to succeed a con save or become blinded. Very, very fun weapon, perfect for a build like this, and another game variant for that would be the Blood of Lathander, just a solid early game option anyway. Legendary weapon, gives you and your allies a bit of healing if you go down, as well as access to Sunbeam once per long rest, which is just going to feel very, very nice to cast with all of the features that we have here. So yeah, overall, pretty solid set for 2 different playstyles that you can possibly go for. But let's get into the actual clothing now. First up, the Hat of the Sharp Caster. I feel like this is a pretty fun one to run on this build, because whenever you run a 1 or a 2 on a damage die for a spell attack, that die is rerolled once. Because we're stacking so many modifiers onto our attacks, we want that base damage to also be quite high, and the Hat of the Sharp Caster is going to allow us to do that. But an early game option for that would be the Hat of Fire Acuity, giving you Arcane Acuity for 2 turns whenever you deal fire damage. Arcane Acuity is going to allow you to gain a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and difficulty class for each remaining turn. So with 2 turns, that's immediately a +2 to your attack rolls and DC, which is pretty damn powerful, especially kind of in the early to mid game. So this is a pretty nice option, again, before you max out kind of your charisma anyway. Next up, the Cloak of Protection. I really wanted more AC and better saving throws with this build. This is going to help our con saves and just stopping us from being hit in the first place. We do have 18 AC with this build by default. With something like Haste, you would have 20 total, which isn't the greatest, but it is more than enough to get the job done in most cases. Next up, we have the Potent Robe, probably one of the most powerful robes for this build. Our cantrips are going to deal damage equal to our Charisma modifier, so we get another Charisma modifier, but this time just for cantrips. Obviously, usually this works with Eldritch Blast, but of course this is actually going to work with both Sacred Flame and Firebolt for us, stacking with the other damage bonuses that we have already for just extremely powerful cantrips. Again, sometimes even out-damaging Eldritch Blast with Agonizing Blast, so that is pretty powerful. And this also comes with the ability to gain temporary hit points equal to our Charisma modifier, and our Armour class is going to get a +1 as well, which is great. Next up, the Boots of Speed. This is going to allow us to click our heels together as a bonus action and being able to dash, and those dashes are also going to impose disadvantage on opportunity attacks against us. So this is great, because we're a little bit squishy, and if we really need to get out of a tense combat situation, these boots are going to help us do that. This works if you're playing either the Spell Sword variation or the main caster variant, which we're playing now. Boots of Speed are going to get us out of situations so we can continue our ranged blast attacks with this. Or if you're playing the melee variant, you can just run in a lot easier. And I just realized I skipped over the gloves. I have the Hell Rider's Pride here. Whenever you heal another creature, it gains resistance against bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage dealt by weapon attacks. This basically means that through our healing abilities, we're going to be able to give our allies a pretty substantial buff. There is technically an upgraded version of this in Act 3, but those are armor, and we don't want to wear armor. These are just gloves, so this works for us here. If you want to upgrade to something that's a bit more power-focused, though, in Act 3, you can pick up the Spell Might gloves, which would allow your spells to basically gain a weaker version of, like Great Weapon Master or Sharpshooter, where you deal an extra 1d8 for the penalty of a -5 to hit. But obviously, we can offset that pretty well with things like Arcane Acuity and such like that, if you really wanted to go for the power building option there. Next up, the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. Whenever one of our cantrips deal Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder damage, we add our spellcasting modifier 2 for damage dealt. Yet again, another addition to our damage, unfortunately only with fire cantrips, so that would be for us Firebolt or even Produce Flame if you're able to use it, but that's still a pretty significant boost for Firebolt. Like seriously, this thing is going to be doing a lot of damage. That is like 4 Charisma modifier stacking bonuses here with a 20, that is a +20 to the damage. That's pretty insane. Anyways, moving on to the rings. I've gone for the typical healing rings. We restore an additional 2 hit points whenever we heal another creature with the Ring of Salving, as well as the Whispering Promise to grant Bless to creatures we heal, including ourselves. These are just pretty typical standard stuff. If you want to go for like the Spellblade variant, you might want to go for like the Ring of Arcane Synergy, or even the Ring of Elemental Infusion to add more fire damage to your attacks. Otherwise, these are pretty safe bets if you want to use a little bit more of that healing option that you have. But anyways, that is the build, and overall what you're going to be getting out of this, like I say, is a hell of a lot of damage. Whether it's Fire, Radiant, or even Force to an extent, you're going to be able to do massive amount of damage with your cantrips and your spells, as well as having the ability to have a bit of build flexibility as well, and healing. Healing being a very unique aspect of this build that is not often explored on Warlock, but I'm actually really happy that it is here. People were going to challenge me to build a Celestial Warlock without actually using Celestial Warlock, and I was going to try and mix Warlock and Cleric and all of that sort of thing, but just being able to do this and actually just have the subclass in front of me is so much fun, and being able to make this fun build as well was just awesome. Again, if we had Divine Soul Sorcerer, I probably would have used that in this build as well, but I'm quite happy with how Draconic turned out. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, I'm quite happy with this build overall. As far as the testing goes, the level progression that I showed in this video is probably the one I'd want to take. It gets us to a lot of the abilities that we actually want, like Radiant Soul, as early as possible, but also giving us things like the Constitution saving throw proficiency, which I did really want. And of course, you're playing a modded build, you're going to want to actually get to the modded stuff as fast as possible, but if that stuff doesn't worry you, you can take those Draconic levels first if you like, entirely up to you. Otherwise, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to have fun with here. You kind of just have to play around and test and see what works best for you. Again, maybe the other version of this mod is the one that you want to use. And overall, like I say, like I say, with the progression of this build, it's going to feel pretty good to play. Sorlocks usually do. Some people don't really like Sorlocks kind of in the early levels because of those limited spell slots, but again, with things like both Fireball and Eldritch Blast being as powerful as they will be for this build, the early to mid game is still going to feel absolutely fine, as well as being able to use, once you get to the kind of mid to late game as well, the kind of like sort of middle of Act 2 and into Act 3, you're going to feel uber powerful getting these extra spells, abilities and such from Sorcerer, and just keep getting the necessary equipment to just keep bumping the damage up even more. And again, that extra little bit of healing utility is nice as well. It won't probably come up as often as just your pure damage dealing options, but it is still a fun thing to have regardless. And like I said, I'm going to be diving pretty deeply into modded content kind of as the patch starts to, you know, settle in. We get out of the growing pains, people get more mods on the mod manager, and we have also gained access to, you know, the console mods as well coming in October. My expectation for that is going to be kind of like early to mid-October, if I had to guess, just from Larian's track record, which is what I'm hoping for. As I'm kind of getting back into the YouTube side of things as well, I'll be updating the mod list. Streams will be happening again. Might do one this Saturday where I explore the modding toolkit further, or maybe we finally do the Dead 3 Deity build stream, because I still have to do the Joaquin build. I haven't got around to that yet. Probably going to be later this week, actually, because that one I've been sitting on for a while. That was one we came up with before. Oh yeah, and I will quickly touch on the combat footage, because this build did have a healing aspect to it, and it is a squishy spellcaster. I did just decide for my own sake of mind to bring another character along for some of the testing, in this case Lae'zel, who is just a pure champion fighter with some of the better fighter gear like the RF Persistence and the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane, who just sat there and tanked hits for me a little bit while I was showing the kind of healing and the damage capabilities of the build. So yeah, just in case you're wondering why that character is there, it's just a pure champion fighter. It's just what I used to kind of speedrun to get this Act 3 save file done, because I needed to get another save file done because patch 7 broke all my previous ones, which was sad. The original Dancer of Eilesdry is no more. However, we do have a new one with a modded look, and she's pretty damn cool. Maybe I'll show that off one day. But anyways, I don't think there's anything much else for me to say or do here, but all I just want to say is, you know, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for supporting me during my hiatus. I mean, I say I took a hiatus. I took a hiatus from YouTube, but I was still around on the internet. I was on other people's streams, both my friends Red and Chaos. I was over in their streams for their various things that they had going on, like charity stuff and what's not, in Chaos's own birthday event, which I believe is still going on by the time this video will be uploaded, so feel free to go check them out over there. You'll find links to them kind of around my general space, I suppose. But yeah, you know, happy to be back. Like I say, modded content is not going to do our 100% hostile takeover just yet. Modded cosmetics are definitely probably going to be showing up in most videos, like modded dyes, hairstyles, faces, and, you know, such like that. But for the most part, the builds themselves will actually still be vanilla, so don't worry too much as far as that's concerned. But I do want to show off more stuff. And like I say, I do want to try making my own mods as well, so I'm going to try and make that happen pretty soon. I just got to sit down and actually find the time to learn the modding toolkit properly, but I do have an idea for a subclass that I really want to try making. It's one that I have homebrewed for D&D 5e. It's just been sitting in my Google Docs for years, which I've adjusted kind of in minor ways over time. That's my Discord going off. I apologize if you just heard that. You probably didn't, actually. I've got professional Discord set up now. But anyways, I am going to go for now. Sorry for the kind of end rant there, but I did just kind of want to, you know, give you guys all a bit of an update on, again, where we're going from here. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this build. Please let me know any feedback or other things you think I should include or change. This is all going to be kind of new to me again, so any feedback is appreciated. Right. I'm going to actually stop the video now. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.